The dog shack, whatever it's called. I don't want to. When I went there. So I was like, shopping.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning.
Not literally before we.
Everyone surviving that's my question of the day. Everyone surviving the time change.
No.
I know it's awful,
I
right?
didn't even know what happened until I got her car and I was like, it's so dark.
We always set our clocks last night. When we wake up, it's like, all right, or like the night before, so when we wake up, it's done. But, oh, I hate this one. It's so dark in the morning. I never want to get up. And my kids don't want to get up either.
I'm glad it's lighter and it's
That is nice. I was saying, like soccer practice, and so it's nice. It'll be bright out.
Yeah.
I don't need to turn on the lights. I guess.
feels more like summer.
I love the fall one though, because then I'm like, oh, it's dark for Halloween, and I prefer the fall anyway.
Yeah.
All right. So
It's
we have one slide right here. So I want to wrap up this topic, and then I mentioned it to you last time. We're gonna go a little out further in the next chapters. Just a timing thing. So we're gonna do this, and then I have a film that we're gonna watch. And normally I cover chapters 3 and 7, and then we watch the film. But we're gonna watch the film and then cover 3 and 7. So we're just gonna switch that this time around, which is totally fine. I think it might actually work better this way, because then we can talk about it as we get into those chapters. But I want to wrap this one up first, and then we'll get into that. So we've covered kind of a lot related to orientation, but the last thing I want to spend a few minutes specifically talking about bisexuality. And we've kind of been talking about this throughout anyway. But if we define it again, which we've talked about many times, we're looking at somebody who's interested in either or both sexes, and has the desire to be with either partner. Okay, so it can be somebody who's interested primarily in one or the other, or equally in both. It can kind of be all over the place. Your textbook kind of randomly, in my opinion, defines 3 different types of bisexuality. I think this is pretty outdated, but they do mention it, so I will mention it. They talk about sequential, contemporaneous, or situational. Okay, and so if someone is sequentially bisexual, they are exclusively with members of one sex, and then exclusively with members of the other. Okay, so like a woman who's exclusively with men, and then exclusively with women after. Okay, so it's kind of one after the other in sequence. Contemporaneous bisexuality is when you can be with members of both sexes during the same period of time. And then situational, right, maybe due to like being in college or in a situation where there's only men or only women, that might change your behavior. Again, I think kind of an outdated idea, but the book does kind of define those 3, so I wanted to mention them. And I think this is kind of a challenging orientation in the sense that there's a lot of misunderstanding and discrimination and stereotypes, right? Like, what are some stereotypes of people who are bisexual? Can anyone think of one? Like, what's a common like stereotype? Yeah. It's not a real organization, right? Like, yeah, it's a really common. Yeah. You're promiscuous. You have no ability to commit to anyone, right? Yeah.
You're either a confused straight girl or a confused gay man.
Totally. You're just confused. Like, you'll figure it out. Or you're in denial about your real orientation, right? That's the other side of it. Did I steal yours or?
Oh, yeah, there's basically they're cheaters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And so not being monogamous, not being able to make up your mind, you're confused, you're in denial, right? Sometimes people identifying as bisexual, people will report that they feel invisible, right? Oftentimes the gay and lesbian community and the bisexual communities have a little bit of like contention, not always, like it's part of the LGBT, that's the B, right? The LGBTQIA plus, right? But sometimes people identifying as bisexual struggle with like, where's my community? Right, like people who are gay or lesbian have like very clearly identified communities. People are heterosexual would be the norm. And then you have individuals in this category who might be like, well, how do I find other people who are bisexual? Right, so sometimes there's like a different level of like stereotype and discrimination and invisibility that can come with this. But bisexuality is something that has increased a lot over time. Bisexuality and pansexuality kind of being used interchangeably, but it is kind of a separate orientation that I did want to take a minute to just acknowledge before we moved on. So as I mentioned, what we'll do from here is I typically cover 3 and 7 next, which are communication and love and intimacy. but we'll get there. We're gonna cover 8 and 9 next, which is adults and child sexuality and adolescent sexuality. And I'd like to cover the adult sexuality unit through a film. So what we're gonna do for the rest of today and then also next class is we're gonna watch a movie. And it's a few years old, but I think it's such a great movie for bringing all of these concepts and ideas together. I'm sure some of you have seen it. It's He's Just Not That Into You. Did you guess it? Right. Oh, okay, right. Well, so I really like this movie because it deals with all these like rules and ideas and stereotypes of dating and relationships and communication. And so I think it creates a lot of opportunities for discussion, which I think we do really well in this class anyway. So I have a worksheet for each of you. This is going to be something that I collect after we finish the movie and talk about it. But I don't want you working on this outside of class. This shouldn't be homework. Fill it out during the movie. Okay, that way you don't have to deal with it later. But as we're going through the movie, I want you to be filling this out. It doesn't go in like order. I'm not gonna ask you like what happened at 3 minutes in, right? But it's more like kind of general things as you're watching the film. So be filling this out, and then what we'll do afterwards, we'll talk about it, and then I'll collect it from you. And this will take us today and Wednesday to get through, and then on Monday, we'll talk about it. And I'll collect it. And so rather than lecturing on chapter 9, we're covering it through this. So make sure you look over chapter 9 a little bit. But there's a lot of themes from it, themes of dating and marriage and communication and all that kind of stuff. And the attendance sheet is going around. I'm sorry, we've been having like network issues, so I wasn't able to print it, but just write your first and last name on the attendance sheet when you get it. Did everyone get one? Okay. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna hit the lights. Obviously, stay with me though, right? I think it's a really interesting film. It's not my favorite kind of film, but I think it's a great one anyway. So please be filling out the sheet as we go. That way you don't have homework. If for some reason you aren't here Wednesday, make sure you watch the rest of the film. I will be posting a link on campus where you can watch it for free if you don't have access to it somewhere else. You can always obviously find it or stream it as well. But otherwise, we will start this. I put the captions on so that you can have that. I don't watch anything without captions anymore. It's weird when they're not on there. We hit the light. Okay, let me pause this. All right. We're ready? All right, here we go. Hopefully we have volume. There we go.
A girl will never forget the first boy she likes.